Johnson.
Judge, you are not a fair judge. You are not. You talk about the evidence. You don't even know what the evidence really was.
What? We need to know! Kill him! Kill him! It's not his fault!
Alright, please be seated, everyone.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Klara Maurova. Klara was nicknamed to be the cannibal mother and was one of 3 involved in the Curran case. Basically, Klara met someone who convinced her to join this kind of a cult that was led by someone who was called the Doctor. After joining this cult, that same woman, who was called Barbara, started to convince Klara to commit certain crimes against her own family. A lot of these crimes are one that I unfortunately cannot even repeat here on YouTube. These crimes continued on for a year until somehow a neighbor of Carla's bought a nanny cam that was on the same frequency as one that Carla was using, and the neighbor's camera's feed ended up getting intercepted with Carla's, and this neighbor saw some of the crimes happening and took the evidence to the police. Thankfully, this was enough for the police to come and take Klara into custody and charge her. The boys involved were able to testify at the trial as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have Irma Grease. I don't care if I say any of these names right, they all suck. Irma was given the nickname the Hyena of Auschwitz, and I think that really speaks for itself. She was a concentration camp guard and even went on to serve as warden of the women's section of Bergen-Belsen. There are many accounts of Irma and the crimes she committed, and they are all absolutely horrific. It is said that she was particularly cruel and stirred panic and fear in every prisoner that crossed her path. Apparently, she even had a lampshade that was made out of the skin of 3 separate prisoners, just as an example of how depraved she really was. These crimes caught up with her in the end, however, as in the spring of 1945 she was arrested along with 45 other people. She was accused of war crimes, and although she pleaded not guilty, the testimonies of witnesses and strong survivors allowed the truth to come out. She was convicted and sentenced to death, which occurred on December 13th, 1945. In our number 8 spot today, we have Leonarda Cianciulli. Better known as the soap maker of Correggio, Leonarda was an Italian serial killer who lived from 1883 until 1970. There are certainly people on this list who took more lives or did what could be considered more brutal things, but these crimes are absolutely chilling. Leonarda took the lives of 3 separate people and turned them into soap and tea cakes using caustic soda. Leonarda's son went to join the Italian army in preparation for World War II, and during this time she figured the only way to protect him was by doing human sacrifices. One of the worst parts of these crimes is that she fed these tea cakes she made to people who would come to visit, along with eating them herself and feeding them to her son. Authorities caught on to her crimes when one of her victims' family members began to get suspicious about the disappearance. In the end, Leonarda was arrested and charged and ended up being convicted to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. In our number 7 spot today, we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noblewoman who lived from August of 1560 to August of 1614. While she was born into one of the oldest and most powerful families in Transylvania and was well educated and successful, she was also killing young women and bathing in their blood. Yeah, super weird and really not cool at all. Elizabeth has gone down as one of the most evil women in history because she was taking the lives of women who were her servants, and she was bathing in their blood because she believed it would keep her young. There's something that's telling me that this probably didn't work. I guess somebody should have told her about drinking water and leaving other people alone. It's way more efficient. Anyway, instead of being remembered as youthful and beautiful, Elizabeth is instead remembered as being a terrible evil person who took the lives of somewhere from 175 to 200 women, but some accounts swear the number might be as high as 600. In our number 6 spot today, we have Herta Oberhauser. Herta was a German physician and convicted war criminal who performed absolutely horrific medical atrocities on prisoners at the Ravensbrück women's concentration camp. She was known for being a part of medical experiments like treating purposely infected wounds with sulfenamide, as well as bone, muscle, and nerve regeneration and transplantation. Herta was the only female that was a defendant in the Nuremberg doctors' trial, and she was convicted for crimes against humanity, but was only sentenced to 20 years in prison. She was released early for good behavior somehow, and ended up becoming a family doctor again in West Germany. That was until a survivor recognized her. Herta then had her medical license revoked and was fined. She tried to appeal but was rejected and never practiced medicine ever again. In our number 5 spot today, we have Myra Hindley. Myra is a woman who was in a relationship with a man called Ian Brady. Together, this couple has been referred to as, quote, 2 sadistic killers of the utmost depravity, and individually, Myra Myra has been called the most evil woman in Britain. Between July of 1963 and October of 1965, these two together took the lives of 5 separate people. The pair were only charged for 3 killings, but both received life sentences under a whole life tariff. After being arrested, she of course tried to pin all of the crimes on Ian and make up excuses for the crimes, like saying that she was running a bath while one of them took place, so what was she supposed to do? Luckily, somehow the judge was able to see through this ironclad self-defense. She ended up making several appeals against her life sentence and claimed that she was a reformed woman, but for some reason no one believed that and she was never released. We have Karla Homolka. Karla is one of the worst Canadians out there. Karla, along with her partner Paul Bernardo, are often referred to as the Ken and Barbie killers, and while Paul started off his life of crime alone initially, he quickly brought Karla into it as well as the crimes only progressed and got worse. After being found out, Paul was arrested and charged for his crimes prior to their relationship, and together the pair was charged with taking the lives of 3 separate people, one of them being Karla's own sister. The investigation of the crimes was quite difficult and complicated, and unfortunately there was no choice but to offer Karla a plea deal. If she fully cooperated with the investigation, she would receive only a 12-year sentence in return, and she accepted. Both Paul and Karla were convicted in 2005, and while Paul still remains in prison, Karla served her 12-year sentence and has since been released. She left Canada for a while, but unfortunately has since returned. In our number 3 spot today we have Isle Cook. Isle was a war criminal who oversaw concentration camps that were run by her husband Carl Otto Cook. She is well known due to her sadistic and brutal treatment of prisoners, and she became one of the first well-known people that committed these types of crimes to be tried by the US military. It is said that those being held at the camps with distinctive tattoos, Isle would take pieces of their skin as souvenirs. When being charged with her crimes, they included things like private enrichment, embezzlement, as well as taking the lives of some prisoners to prevent them from testifying. In the original trial, she was acquitted for lack of evidence, although her husband was sentenced to death by an SS court in Munich. After a few more trials, however, she ended up being sentenced to life in prison, and despite multiple appeal attempts, she was never released. In our number 2 spot today we have Daria Nikolaevna Saltyakova. That's the best we're gonna get. Daria was a Russian noblewoman and a serial killer from Moscow. She became well known for killing many of her serfs, mostly women, which is kind of similar to Elizabeth, who we already talked about today. Because of her ties to the Russian royal court and other Russian nobility, complaints about the deaths at her estate were initially ignored and only resulted in punishments for those who did the complaining. Eventually, however, relatives of those who had been killed were able to bring a petition to Empress Catherine II, who then decided to try Daria publicly. Investigations took 6 long years, where the investigating official counted up to 138 suspicious deaths, basically all of which could likely be attributed to Daria. In the end, she was found guilty of 38 of these crimes, but the Empress wasn't quite sure what the punishment should be, as the death penalty had already been abolished in Russia. In the end, Daria was chained on a public platform and made to wear a sign around her neck that detailed the crimes she committed. After this form of punishment, she was sent to jail to serve out her life sentence. In our number 1 spot today we have Delphine LaLaurie. Delphine was a New Orleans socialite who was an evil person behind closed doors. It is said that in public, Delphine was polite and appeared as if she cared for those who were enslaved in her home, which is the most ridiculous sentence I've ever said, but that's what the accounts of people who lived at this time said. Delphine's social standing remained until, on April 10, 1834, authorities responded to a fire at her Royal Street mansion. When they arrived and went inside, no one was prepared for the horrors they were about to see, as they discovered bound slaves in her attic who had clear signs of violent behavior over a long period of time. Following this, her house was swarmed by an outraged group of New Orleans citizens, but somehow Delphine was able to escape with her family to France. While the angry group destroyed her entire home, Delphine never faced any punishments for her crimes, which is one of the most frustrating endings to this horrible, awful story.
Alright, first up we have Regina Johnson. Regina Johnson was sentenced to 80 years to life for the murder of her daughter and husband. Johnson was convicted of the double killing which took place in May 2012. Now, Johnson was said to have stayed with the bodies of the pair for 3 days at their home in San Carlos. It seems that Johnson had snapped. She'd used lipstick on a mirror to write, "This is all your fault." The 60-year-old woman admitted to shooting her husband in self-defense after he killed their daughter, but this didn't fly with the jury. After she was sentenced for life, this was her outburst.
How can you say that? They never proved anything. Nobody ever said, they never even had a motive. Why? Why? How can you sit there and say that I killed my daughter?
She then also had an absolute breakdown asking how the judge could say these things about her. She ended her emotional outburst by saying this.
Standing up when I shot him. I shot him because he shot my daughter. That's not fair. What kind of judge is that?
Then
I have no respect for you as a judge.
she was then removed from the courtroom. So this one is more of a breakdown than a freakout, but it's very intense nonetheless. Next up we have Tatiana Fusari. 27-year-old Tatiana Fusari and her partner Seth Welch were charged with murder and first-degree child abuse when their daughter died of malnutrition and dehydration. The pair said that they did not seek medical help when they noticed that their daughter looked ill because of, I quote, religious reasons. Miss Fusari and Mr. Welch heard their charge together, and I know this video is female convicts freaking out, but honestly the combination of both of them is pretty priceless. As they hear that they're being charged for murder, this is their reaction.
To a child, they're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment or any term of years less than life.
This is basically how they reacted when they found out they could be spending their life in jail. Next up we have Sheila McFarland. Sheila McFarland was convicted of being involved in the murder of drugs informant Robert Williams, who was killed by a hired assassin for communicating with police in a drugs investigation. The pair behind his killing were found to be Eddie Brown Lee and Miss McFarland herself. So the judge, Daniel Gall, convicted McFarland of involvement in the murder and sentenced her to life in jail. She blurted out that she thought that he was racist, and then she had this to say.
No, because you have always been disrespectful to me, and you don't like black people, and you definitely don't like me.
Judge Gall accused her of playing the race card. He said, when you try and flip the script, when you play the race card in a disgusting fashion, but most importantly, when you manipulate the system of justice by murdering a witness in a criminal trial, you will pay the harshest possible penalty. This was their final exchange.
We're not going to talk to you about post-release control.
I already know you ain't gonna release me, and I don't see you no more. I'm glad that I don't have to even see you. I ain't got to see you in the drug case.
Well,
It's over.
You're going to be back in here with that drug case.
This next one makes me feel really sad. A lot of courtroom freakouts are moments of indignation, but some are from utterly broken people who know they did a terrible, terrible thing and they can't take it back. That is the theme going on here with Jodie Herring up next. So Jodie Herring was sentenced for killing a social worker who took away custody of her daughter. Lara Sobel was killed as she was leaving work, and Herring then went on to kill 3 of her own relatives. She shot them. The deaths were totally tragic and motivated by revenge. However, Herring pleaded that she was suffering from mental health issues. She accepted responsibility for the murders, and on the day of sentencing, she made this sad outburst.
And I'm very sorry. I can't take back that day. I wish I could, but I can't. I handle my stress so differently than anybody else does, and I wish I could help myself. I really could. I asked for help several times, and I didn't get it.
Honestly, how horrible for her family, her children, and the family of Lara Sobel. Lara's sister said, she took a life, my sister's life. She took 3 other lives, and she doesn't deserve to have 1 day of liberty. Herring did indeed get life without parole. Finally, now this may seem like a tenuous link, but honestly it works. It is so dramatic. We have the woman who freaked out at the James Holmes sentencing. This is Deborah Cave's crazy reaction taking the first place spot here. So James Holmes, as you may know, killed 12 people at a movie theater in Aurora as they watched Batman in 2012. It was horrible, it was disgusting, it was a massacre. He was being sentenced for 12 counts of life. Attorney George Brochler was pushing for the death penalty. Cave shouted out in defense of the killer. It was a really weird and dramatic outburst. She proclaimed that actually James Holmes was her son. Oh, dramatic. Have a listen to the first part.
Mental illness is everything. I'm the biological mother. She's the surrogate. They took him away from me, and they adopted because they know they had mental illness. All of my family's full of FBI.
So yeah, she's saying his parents took him away from her. As she was then removed from the courtroom, she screams this.
No! Kill him! Kill him! It's not his fault!
Honestly, such high drama. You can then hear her screams down the hall for a very long time. She herself became a convict as she was sentenced to 3 weeks in jail for contempt of court. Seriously, what a freak out and what an outburst. And at number 10 we have Diana Lovejoy. Diana Lovejoy freaked out so hard that she fainted when her guilty verdict was read out in court. The woman from Carlsbad in San Diego was arrested for a plot to kill her estranged husband. Diana and Walden McDavid Jr. conspired to kill Greg Mulvihill. The pair were in the middle of a divorce battle and it all got pretty ugly. The man survived a murder attempt, but Diana was still sentenced to 26 years to life in prison for her crime. Here's the moment the guilty verdict was read out.
At a gun rage, and at the word guilty you hear a thud, then weeping in the gallery. A reporter from another station is trained as a boy, was unconscious for a time, then taken to a hospital for treatment.
That's right, she straight up conked it in court. She was taken away in a stretcher. Coming in at number 9 we have Alexandria Thomas. Alexandria Thomas and her mother broke down during a hearing at the Palm Beach County Jail in Florida. The woman was accused of stabbing her boyfriend to death outside a supermarket in Palm Beach. She was standing before a judge who told her her boyfriend was in a medically induced coma. The woman soon understood how serious the charges against her were, and this was her reaction.
Alexandria Thomas crying hysterically.
As you can see, it was all very intense. Here we have her mother outside of the courtroom, and she's still very emotional.
I know she's very worried about the victim who was her boyfriend, who she loved very much.
Coming into number 8, we have Kay Andrea Cook. Kay Andrea's reaction to her sentencing went so viral that we could not discuss it in this video. The then teenager received 20 years for carjacking in an elaborate dating app plot that ended in the shooting of another teenager. At the time, Kay Andrea was 18, and when she was read her 20-year sentence, this is what happened first. So yeah, that's her mother screaming and crying and losing it. I honestly feel like her mum really set her off, because this was then Kay Andrea's response. Yep, neither of them took it well. It was very emotional, and honestly, it's pretty stressful to watch. Coming into number 7, we have Mitchell Blair. 36-year-old Mitchell Blair was a mother of 4 who killed 2 of her children, 9-year-old Stephen Berry and 13-year-old Stoney Blair. She put their bodies in a freezer, so not a great mum. The woman was sentenced to life in jail without parole, meaning that she would never be released. Throughout her much publicized trial, Mitchell broke down with outbursts many times. One example is right here. This came during a custody hearing for her 2 surviving children. She screams she did kill her daughter, getting very irate. She said that the girl had abused her other children, but the court found no evidence of that. She was removed from the courtroom a number of times. Coming into number 6, we have Kayla Ray Norton. So this actually wasn't a life sentence, but it was a pretty long sentence and a fierce reaction. White supremacist Kayla Ray Norton and Jose Torres gatecrashed a black 8-year-old's birthday party with guns and a Confederate flag in Douglasville in July 2015. Now the pair were just part of a wider group, but the group did repeatedly use the N-word to the children. Now this was deemed as racially motivated. It also came a month after fellow supremacist Dylan Roof killed 9 African Americans in a church, so it was a very sensitive time. Anyway, we can all agree that this was awful behaviour from Kayla and friends, and this was her reaction to her 6-year sentence.
Not me. That's not me. That's not him. I would never walk up.
She did seem pretty sorry. She broke down in tears, and she did say she accepted her sentence. The next freakout also comes from regular sentencing, but it is so intense I had to include it. Coming into number 5, we have the Vegas lady who is not done talking. So okay, I know that this isn't a life sentence or anything, but the way in which she freaks out rivals a lot of the freakouts on this list, and I thought you might want to see it. I basically just found this footage by googling woman freaks out in court, so like the details are a bit sketchy here. It seems like this woman has done something dubious in Las Vegas, and she's in court hearing about her crime and the fact that she'll likely go to jail. She tries to explain herself, but the judge is like, shh. This is her reaction to being silenced.
Yes, you are.
Let me go. I got kids and responsibilities.
Come on.
Y'all, let me go. No, let me go.
Whoa. Whoa. The leg kicking is super intense. Then, when you think that she's been calmed, she comes out with this.
Respect her own goddamn. Sorry, bitch.
If she wasn't going to jail before, she certainly is now. Okay, we have a lot of recent history lady drama, but one of the most intense and horrifying reactions to a sentence in history comes way back from 1541 at the execution of Lady Margaret Pole. Now this is one of the most gruesome and memorable trials of all time. Check it out at number 4. Poor Margaret was arrested by King Henry VIII and his henchmen. She was brought for execution at the Tower of London without trial, so basically her trial was that day, found her guilty, and yeah, her head was coming off. On the 27th of May, a summer's morning, Lady Margaret proclaimed that she was not going to lay her head on the execution block, and if the executioner wanted to decapitate her, he would have to do it where she stood. He did it, but he missed her neck, and she ran around screaming, scratching, and hissing. She literally spat blood at those who wrongly accused her. Eventually, after 11 blows, she was killed, but it's said that her ghost still haunts the Tower of London today. Coming into number 3, back with more modern history, we have this Dallas woman. Mother Elizabeth Escalona abused her daughter, beating her and gluing her hands to the wall. She was shown pictures of her 2-year-old toddler's injuries. Now the little girl was left near death following her mother's savagery. The 23-year-old woman was sentenced to 99 years in jail, longer than usual life terms. When she's read the sentence, her reaction is very strong.
Penitentiary for a period of 99 years. The sentence goes into effect today. As required by law, you will receive all back time credits. Counsel, is there any
We can't see her face, but her body doubles over in shock. She cries, but the real freak out comes from the woman's mother, who screams the house down.
Counsel, is there any reason in law why sentence should not be pronounced at this time? Safely held, to be turned over to duly authorized.
It's actually heartbreaking on so many levels. I'm really glad the toddler survived, if there is any silver lining here. Okay, you're gonna need to prepare your ears for number 2. We have this Miami screamer. This is so intense. A woman who lived in Miami was arrested for killing her husband, a crime that would carry a life sentence. As she meets with a judge in a bail hearing in 2013, she applies for bond, but she is denied. This was her reaction. She is distressed and also scantily dressed. She's wheeled in a wheelchair, and she seems like clothing has been placed over her rather than on her. I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
Your Honor, if I may.
Me tengo que ir a la cárcel así, pero mi marido me pegó. Si eres el que me rompió la pierna, por favor, my husband broke my leg. Please, no, don't do that. I have my leg broke.
Anyway, she screams that her husband broke her legs, seeming to confess to the killing, but in self-defense. Seriously, she is screaming at that judge. Finally, coming into number 1, this is one of the most dramatic things I have ever seen in some courtroom footage. We have the trial of Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham. A double whammy and truly, truly sad. The pair were sent to prison for the rest of their lives for beating toddler Serenity Richardson to death. The child's godmother, Erica Mae, and her lover, Shanita, beat the 3-year-old girl, with their defense being, and I quote, "We didn't know what we did would kill her," right? The women caused a courtroom stir. In November 2011, when their sentences were read, first cries and screams are heard as the sentences run out. Then things get even more dramatic. Both of the women on trial collapse and fall to the floor. The screams we then decipher are coming from the gallery from Erica May's mother. It's honestly one of the most intense things I've ever seen. The women are attended to by medics and the mother is escorted out by security, but she's screaming out the door. The whole thing is total chaos. We hear another woman screaming, "Get up, Erica!" Like, she's fainted, I really don't think she can hear you. Then as she comes to, she's dragged out of the courtroom on a wheelie chair, and her girlfriend before her was too, and it's all very intense. She's hyperventilating very loudly, and I just want done with this footage.
Coming in at number 10, I'm waiting for this one to be made in some kind of like epic, sexy, ancient Roman spy movie because starting at number 10 we have Mistress Marcia. Mistress Marcia was responsible for the demise of Roman Emperor Commodus. But not only was she his assassin, she was also his most favored concubine. Talk about keeping your enemies closer, eh Marcia? Marcia Aurelius Gionia Demetrius, along with most of Rome, wasn't a fan of this great leader. He was arrogant, would kill off his officials randomly, and tried to rename Rome after himself. But Marcia was skilled at managing his temper and even convinced him to release the Christians sentenced to labor in the Sardinian mines. But in 192 AD, Commodus wanted to appear next to the gladiators instead of the traditional place all rulers took in the palace. Marcia tried to convince him how much that would offend Rome, but Commodus took that as a slight and instead of brushing it aside, condemned her to death the following morning. Overreaction. Enraged, Marcia leapt into action once she discovered his plan. It was typical of the mistress to feed the emperor wine after his bath every night, so she enlisted the help of two conspirators and poisoned the cup. Unfortunately, it only made him violently ill and not dead, so they paid an athlete to strangle him to death. Marcia then married her fellow slave and lover Eclectus before they were both caught and killed a year later for the crime. Still, took him a year to figure it out. Not bad, Marcia. Julia Tofana. This next woman found a deadly way to help young maidens escape unwanted marriages. Back at a time when women had no social or financial protection if they did not have a man beside them, many young ladies were used as pawns to negotiate wealth and status for their families, even unwillingly. Which meant many had no protection should they be trapped in an abusive marriage, which is where our home ec assassin comes in. Born in Palermo, Italy, Julia sold poisons that were effective in helping divorces come along by, let's say, natural causes. Though not much is known about the woman herself, Julia would become one of the most famous hitwomen in history for providing a poison called aqua tofana. Disguised as a necessary tonic for women to use, the substance was a combination of arsenic, belladonna, and lead, all of which were actually found in makeup. Oops. Belladonna was used to expand the pupils so women would look more alluring, for example. But aqua tofana was the perfect tasteless and odorous concoction to pour into husband's end of the day ale. She kept a steady business for 50 years, long enough to involve her daughter before she was discovered. One of her clients apparently had second thoughts before pouring her husband some soup, and that eventually revealed the scheme. Julia killed over 600 men before the death of her and her accomplices. Coming in at number 8. Charlotte Corday, the assassin of Marat. If you paid attention in history class, you know how bloody and ruthless the French Revolution was. Heads flew everywhere, the prisons were filled with nobles, rioters filled the streets. Needless to say, it wasn't a great place to be, but Charlotte Corday had a mission. Charlotte was a passionate supporter of the revolution, even though its main conspirators were set on killing the likes of her. Charlotte was, after all, a noblewoman, though she opposed the reign of terror. There were two sides to the fray, the Girondists and the Jacobins, and Charlotte fought along the first. But the Jacobins were radical and tried to kill any and all oppositionists, the Girondists included, which is why Charlotte decided that Jean-Paul Marat, leader of the Jacobins and journalist, had to get the hell out. You gotta admire her gumption, man, because she just stormed in while this guy was taking a bath. She bought a knife, disguised herself as an informant, and went in to speak to him. At first she delivered on her offer and told him of escaped Girondins, but he had once said that they should be guillotined, so she whipped out her knife and ended his bath time once and for all. Corday knew she was going to be caught, however, and had told not even her family of her plans. Charlotte was guillotined on July 17, 1793, with her name attached to her dress so she would be recognized. She wrote in a letter explaining her actions, "I desire only that my head carried through Paris may be a rallying standard for all the friends of the law." That's commitment right there. Next up, at number 7, we have Idoia Lopez Riaño, also known as La Tigresa, the Tigress. Man, wicked names. Make it so hard not to think they're bad. I mean, they killed people. That's bad. The Tigress was a leading commander in a deadly political group aimed at earning independence of the Basque region of Spain. The group was responsible for the death of 800 people in the years before it was disbanded in 2018. She was responsible for planting a bomb in the center of Madrid in 1986, killing 12 police officers. After killing 5 more police a year later, at aged 22, La Tigresa made it onto the most wanted list. But what's even more disturbing was her tendency to seduce the police she killed before the bombings took place, even killing their colleagues across multiple days. When she was finally caught in 1994, she accumulated a sentence of 2,000 years in prison. However, she was released only 23 years later after several apologies and quitting the ETA. She is now studying to be a journalist. Okay, makes you wonder, does that count as getting away with it? Coming in at number 6, Brigitte Monhop. Brigitte Monhop was known at one time for being the most evil woman in Germany. She killed over 9 people throughout her involvement in the West Germany far leftist terrorist group, the Red Army. In fact, she ran it. She became the head of the RAF after its 4 previous leaders were caught and committed suicide in jail. They orchestrated a reign of terror across West Germany in the 1970s, killing over 30 people, with Brigitte being responsible for 9. She was known for her extravagant murder attempts and her cold and calculating behavior. Once she even handed a bouquet of flowers before shooting them point blank in the face. She was finally arrested in 1982 and, like Rihanna, was supposed to spend life in prison. But to the country's surprise and horror, Brigitte was released on parole in 2007 at the age of 57. Monhop has never shown remorse for any of her victims to this day, but she keeps a low profile. Next up at number 5, we have an assassin who continues to work to this day, but for the other side. Kim Yeon-hui was just 19 when she was handpicked at her university to become a spy for the North Korean government. Her mission? To disrupt the Seoul Olympics in 1987 and show the world that South Korea was too dangerous to be a host. How? Well, after training for years as a spy, when Kim was just 25, she boarded a Boeing passenger plane and stored a bomb in the overhead compartment. Her and her assumed father got off at Abu Dhabi, but the bomb was detonated before it reached Seoul, killing 115 people. She says that her mission was personally assigned by Kim Jong II, and it was to help prevent South Korea from becoming more powerful than the North. She was brainwashed into thinking that this mission was for the sake of uniting Korea, and this was the very reason the president of South Korea pardoned her. Hyun-hee and her partner were intercepted and caught in Bahrain, but she didn't have time to use the cyanide like her partner did. She confessed after a week of interrogation. Today, she is married to a former South Korean spy and is the mother of 2 children. She is now trying to warn the world not to trust North Korea's current leader, Kim Jong-un. Due to the information she has shared, Hyun-hee thinks she's on the list to be assassinated next. Coming in at number 4, this is another one that needs to be a movie. Oh wait, it is, called Hidden Man. This is a tale of epic proportions of honor, struggle, but most importantly, for this video, vengeance. In 1911, China was in turmoil while many local warlords were trying to fight for power. Shi Qianchao's father, who had fought in the wars leading to the fall of the empire before, was captured and killed by a rival warlord named Sun Chuanfang. That day, his fate was sealed. She plotted for years and finally set the date for November 13th, 1935. After the warlord retired, he became a Buddhist at a temple in Tianjin, and she followed pistol in hand. Posed as a dedicated follower, she waited until everyone in the room had their eyes closed before she shot her father's killer. She then scattered letters and a photo of her father to assure everyone in the room that her task was complete and that she would not hurt any of them. The media caught wind of this assassination and swept up her name following words such as courageous, brave, and her case saw 3 trials before she was pardoned in 1936. I guess the public loves a good revenge story, but of course, who doesn't? That's why you're here. Coming in at number 3, we have La Tosca, another bad name lighting up the list. Maria Lopez, also known as La Tosca, was caught after completing 20 murders by the time she reached only 26 years old. She was reportedly paid $1,700 a month by the infamous Mexican drug cartel Los Zeta to complete her hit list. Los Zeta are allegedly responsible for over 14 drug-selling hotspots in Monterrey and are currently battling the Gulf Cartel for territory. Until her arrest in 2012, La Tosca was responsible for hitting rival traffickers and any police officers that got in the way. She's also accused of leading a criminal cell responsible for even more crimes, including torture and carjacking. Though she definitely isn't the only female assassin involved in the cartels, she's yet to be topped for number of kills. Coming in at number 2, we have Jeanette Van Nessen. We cannot have a list of top 10 female assassins without talking about Jeanette Van Nessen. But before we do, remember to tell us you like us by pressing that thumbs up button. Now, especially over COVID, many of us may now be familiar with freelance work, but hopefully not this kind. Jeanette worked as a freelance assassin charging 80,000 euros per hit. Most of her kills took place in South America, but unfortunately for her, she took one hit too far. She was hired by the Black September organization to kill an Israeli intelligence agent named Carl, which she did after she seduced him. But unbeknownst to her, as soon as she did, she put a target on her back. Abner Kaufman made it his own personal mission to take her down and eventually cornered her in her boathouse along with another agent. But she wasn't gonna go down that easy, and she slipped off her robe in an attempt to seduce Abner. But then the charade shattered when she reached for her gun. Bang bang, they shot her down and she died holding her cat. I just think that's great. If you want to see a dramatic presentation of this scene, just watch the film Munich, directed by Steven Spielberg. Coming in, last but not least, number 1, Freddy and Truus Overstegen. Who says the best assassins work alone? No assassin I've met, that's for sure, mostly because I haven't met any that I know of. Sister duo Freddy and Truus Overstegen fought back against the German occupation during World War II and never revealed how many soldiers they killed. When the war was about to begin, their mother took in Jewish refugees and hid them in their house. Soon the two girls, then later along with their friend Hani, took a more deadly approach to resistance. Freddy joined the Dutch resistance when she was just 14, soon followed by Truus. In the 1940s, when the Netherlands were invaded, the three girls took on the role of ambushing and seducing SS soldiers and their Dutch collaborators straight to their death. Soon the teens began to take on shooting missions by themselves. In 1943 they met Hani, who dropped out of school when she refused to sign allegiance to Germany. All three of them became excellent shooters, but Hani was captured just 3 weeks before the war ended. Her last words apparently were, "I'm a better shot," when her executioner only wounded her. Both Truus and Freddy survived the war and both died at the age of 92 in 2016. It was only after their deaths that they received national recognition. After all is fair in love and war, and these two women helped fight a war that would haunt generations to come. Thank you so much for joining me with this deadly top 10. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and follow us for more, of course. Now, there's still one question that is left unanswered. Who is the best female assassin? I think even in this top 10 we didn't find her. In fact, no one knows. Only the assassin herself, because, after all, the best assassin never gets caught. Coming in at number 10, we have Sally Skull. Sally Skull was known to be a great shooter, a cusser, and a horse thief. She had a total of 5 husbands whom she kept for as long as they could handle her. Some divorced, while others found mysterious exits. Sally grew up tough, having to defend their farm constantly from intruders, and once watched her mother Rachel, the name, chop off the toes of a man trying to break in. I really shouldn't relate my name to that situation, but here we are. So as a result, Sally was always ready to fight and apparently didn't take much to start gunslinging. And reportedly, she was ambidextrous and could shoot with both her right and left hand. She was also known, of course, for her horse wrangling, which wasn't always legal. In fact, most often, it wasn't. Sally would ride from Texas to Mexico there and back by herself, and always come back with horses to trade and unharmed. Clearly, this was a woman who people thought twice about when it came to messing with her. Coming in at number 9, we have Ma Barker. Before she became Ma Barker, she was Arizona Donnie Clark, a fiery, ill-tempered, restless girl stuck in the small ways of life. But when she saw infamous outlaw Jesse James ride through town, she saw her future flash before her eyes, and boy did she want it. Arizona married a soft-spoken man named George Barker, who did nothing to fulfill her dreams besides give her 4 troublesome boys. But soon, her boys became one of the most iconic gangs of the West, with Ma Barker orchestrating the whole thing. The Barker Carpus gang made away with $500,000 in cash and bonds in their first bank robbery, and they didn't stop there. The second robbery wasn't as clean, but it solidified a murderous reputation for the group. Ma Barker soon made it to the top of the most wanted list before she died in an epic shootout with police on January 16th, 1935. Ma Barker got what she wanted in the end: adventure, a notorious reputation, and took down all those who got in her way. Coming in at number 8, we have Belle Starr. Here we have another infamous name of the West, Belle Starr. Most of Belle's life involved relationships with some already infamous outlaws like notorious bank train robber Jesse James, as I already mentioned. Belle's marriage to Jim Reed was the beginning of her life of crime, though. Reed and his family were constantly running from the law, and allegedly Belle joined in, though some historians suggest that was not the case. She did take their 2 children and rejoined her family before Reed died in 1874. But then she met Sam Starr, a Cherokee and part of the Starr gang, and there was no going back. Over the course of her marriage, legends of Belle spread across the West. She carried 2 pistols at all time, wore gold earrings and a man's feather-brimmed hat. She was arrested several times over the course of her career, but after Sam was killed, she reformed and never even sheltered criminals ever again. When she married a 3rd time, she didn't even defend her husband when he was accused of horse thievery. But that didn't stop someone from building a vendetta against her. The life and crimes of Belle Starr came to an end when she was shot to death riding home from her friends, but to this day, no one knows who put an end to the legend. Alright, coming in at number 7, we have Rachel Wall. Now, we've talked about some outlaws on land, but what about those on the sea? Rachel Wall was someone you never wanted to come across if you wanted to live a long and healthy life. Rachel loved the sea and wanted to be as close as possible, which is partly why she married a fisherman, George Wall. What drew the couple to piracy though, no one knows, but boy were they good at it. Whenever there was a bad storm, they would disguise their stolen ship, the Essex, and make it look like it crashed. Rachel would then pose on the ship, luring sailors nearby with cries for help, so she was kind of like the first siren. As soon as they were close enough though, they would rob and kill all of them. Over the course of the pirating career, they killed 24 sailors and robbed 12 ships, accounting in $12,000 cash. But one night their plot went horribly wrong and George was drowned at sea, leaving Rachel all alone. But she didn't stop there and instead resorted to highway robbery. She just couldn't stop. She loved it. Unfortunately though for Rachel, she robbed the wrong bonnet one day and was convicted. She was one of New England's first female pirates and the last woman to be hung in the Boston Common of Massachusetts. Coming in at number 6, we have Ruth Eisman Scheer, coming in closer to modern day. Ruth Eisman Scheer, one of the few women to make it onto the FBI's most wanted list. Her and her boyfriend at the time kidnapped a rich heiress named Barbara Mackle and ransomed her for $500,000. Keep in mind this was in the 1960s, so that may not seem like a ton of money to go through kidnapping someone now, but it was back then. But they didn't just tie her up in a basement and leave her for days or something like that. No, what she did was something incredibly terrifying. They buried Barbara alive in a coffin. Fortunately, they fed a ventilated tube into the coffin so they could keep her alive as a bargaining chip. Thankfully though, Mackle was found 3.5 days later, dehydrated, starving, but still alive. Ruth's lover, Gary Christ, was arrested almost right away, but it would be 79 days until they would catch Ruth. She was arrested in Oklahoma while pretending to be a 19-year-old college student, but obviously her disguise wasn't good enough. Ruth only served 4 of her 7-year sentence before she was deported back to Honduras. Listen, anyone who can bury anyone alive sounds absolutely terrifying to me, which is why Ruth Eisman is on this list. And arriving at number 5, we have Juana Barraza. Mexican wrestler turned killer, Juana Barraza's life is anything but boring. Juana had a torturous childhood, suffering from abuse from her parents, and never even learned how to read. When she finally left home, Barraza endured several failed marriages, miscarriages, and her firstborn was killed during an episode of gang violence at the age of 24. But during the 1980s, 1990s, she toured central Mexico as a masked wrestler named La Dame de Silencio, the Lady of Silence. But unfortunately, she still fell into poverty and eventually hatched a plan to steal from the elderly, which eventually evolved to murder. Her and her accomplice would dress as nurses to gain access and then rob the elderly homeowner once inside. But her accomplice double-crossed her, getting her corrupt police boyfriend to extort her for the money she stole in exchange for not being arrested. So she was kind of broke even then. After retiring from wrestling in 2000, Barraza became more desperate, which is when the killings began. Barraza evaded police for years as they weren't even looking for a woman, but a man. She was even on TV for an interview a week before her arrest and no one suspected a thing. The only reason she was caught was that someone saw her leave a crime scene and she was arrested right on the spot. Despite being illiterate, they found trophies and paper clippings of all the crimes she committed. She was able to evade capture and suspicion for 5 years, and her crimes still haunt Mexico to this day. Coming in at number 4, we have Margot Freshwater. This next one definitely sounds like something that belongs in Orange is the New Black. In 1970, Margot Freshwater was serving out her sentence for first-degree murder in Tennessee all-female prison, but not for long. On October 4th, her and her inmate Faye Fairchild dodged armed officers escorting them and scaled the fence and caught a one-way ticket to freedom. Margot would be on the run for 32 years, only to be discovered as a grandmother of 7 with 2 children in Idaho. But that's not even the wildest part. The way she got into prison in the first place is kinda crazy. Margot was trying to convince a lawyer to help her get her current boyfriend out of jail. She and the lawyer soon began an affair, but the thing was, the lawyer was kind of paranoid that people were after him. So what did he do? They went on a crime spree, killing 2 convenience store clerks and a cab driver. The lawyer was committed to a mental asylum Salem, Margot was convicted of murder for all 3 crimes, even though she claimed he forced her to. Still, after she escaped and 32 years on the run, she was placed back in prison in 2002, only serving time until she was released in 2011. We're arriving at our top 3 now, guys, so if you do like this video, tell us. Press the little button that looks like this down there, and then we'll keep going. Coming in at number 3, we have Griselda Blanco, a woman you would never want to cross paths with. If you did, you probably wouldn't live to tell the tale. Also known as the Black Widow and the Queen of Cocaine, Griselda was a central figure in the drug wars of America during the 1970s and 80s. She trafficked cocaine with the Medellin cartel in high-profile areas like Miami, Florida, New York, and Southern California. She was said to be an absolutely ruthless killer, and while authorities only convicted her for 40 deaths, there is reason to suspect her number hits over 200. She was also notorious for murdering her husbands over trivial matters, but especially over money. But her bloodlust didn't stop there. Griselda was known for holding all-female orgies where she would execute all the strippers afterward for pleasure. Blanco had the DEA on her trail for years, but she always managed to cleverly evade them. That is, until she was finally caught in 1985. Still, she was able to strike a deal and only serve 15 years in prison for her crimes. Some even say there was some manipulation of the trial when it came to those who testified. But after Griselda was released in 2004, someone still had it out for her, and she was assassinated after she was deported to Colombia at the age of 69. This woman was 100% lethal and the last person you would have wanted to be stuck in a room with. Coming in at number 2, we have Hazel Leota Head. Now for an outlaw who is still on the run today. Hazel Leota Head is wanted for the murder of widower Charles Barker in 1998. Imagine if someone watching this is like, oh wait, I saw her at the grocery store yesterday. Charles Barker had recently lost his wife of 11 years due to a drunk driver and fell into a deep depression. He spent a lot of the insurance money gambling and drinking, which is where he got the attention of Hazel Leota Head, or Deanna Ray as he would know her. Within a few days she moved in with him. His family was excited that he'd met someone, but after meeting her, daughter Jennifer was like, yeah, she's after your money, Dad. And Charles was like, yeah, I think she is too. Don't worry, I'll talk to her about it. She never heard from him again and was found with a bullet in the back of his head. Hazel nowhere to be seen. His gun was wiped clean, the safe was entirely empty, which meant $45,000 were missing, and his car was found at an airport with DNA in the seat that identified Deanna as Hazel. Hazel reportedly had been married over 10 times and used alias after alias for each of them. She is wanted also for arson, theft, and now murder. Hazel would be 72 years old today and counting, so if you spot her, tell someone. Probably a good idea. Coming in at number 1, we have Qing Shi. From prostitute to pirate lord, Qing Shi was one of the most infamous pirates to rule the high seas. Highly organized, ruthless, and precise, Qing Shi eventually ruled over as many as 50 to 70,000 pirates in her lifetime. While working as a prostitute, she caught the eye of already famous pirate captain of the Red Flag Fleet, Cheng Yi. There are multiple accounts as to how they got together, but both versions involve the captain proposing to her. She said yes, but not before she negotiated that they would share the power of the fleet and any plunder. Together they grew the fleet from 200 ships to 1,800 and categorized their fleet by colors, red being in the lead, the others being black, yellow, white, and blue. But only 6 years into their marriage, Cheng Yi died and Qing Shi stepped into the role wholeheartedly. She ran a tight ship, handing out fierce punishments to all those who disobeyed the code. She was strict with her prisoners, keeping her men in check should any woman be taken in. Should they take a wife? Fine, but they had to remain faithful, if not, dead. If they took a woman against her will, dead. Any who deserted would be hunted down, tortured, then killed. The Red Fleet eventually felt like a floating country, even routinely taxing villages. She earned the name the Terror of South China, and soon the Chinese government realized they couldn't defeat her, so they made a bargain. A bargain that allowed her to retire wherever she liked and bathe in her riches. There's actually so much to this story, but for now, I think we can all agree she would have been the last person you wanted to see on the horizon.
And at number 10, we have the motherly girlfriend. Really creepy. But when I mentioned that I was doing this video to our friend Michael McCrudden, he was like, yeah, I want a girlfriend like my mom. And I found that just a bit strange. A touch disconcerting, shall we say. The motherly girlfriend is the kind of girlfriend who treats you a bit like you are her child. She cooks for you, she washes your clothes, she tucks you in at night, she makes you chocolate milk, she wipes your nose when it's snotty, she kisses your knee when you have a boo-boo, heck, she'll probably even wipe your if you ask her nicely. All the men who independent, throw your hands up at me. Next up, a modern classic type of girlfriend, we have the girlfriend who loves Taylor Swift. Like, how are you ever gonna compete with Taylor, bro? She just speaks to us gals. So have you ever gone out with a girl that has suddenly acquired just a little bit of sass, and she's getting all like, darling I'm a nightmare, dressed like a daydream up in your face? Well, chances are she is a Taylor Swift loving girlfriend. And also the chances are she will always be wondering whether your relationship is out of the woods. She's gonna be wondering what color she most associates with loving you. She's a Taylor Swift girlfriend. Things that you should never ever say to a Taylor Swift loving girlfriend are, yeah, well Taylor doesn't write her own songs anyway, or who's Taylor Swift, because she will axe you. Now the only way to handle this type of girlfriend is to accept her love for Tay-Tay. If not, you could be in trouble. Yeah, and also, you may never ever be getting back together. Screaming, crying, perfect storm, I can make all the tables turn. That's right, up next we have the crazy jealous girlfriend. Uh-oh, beware. Crazy jealous girlfriend is on the loose. So I would like to think that this is just something that applies to teenagers when they are in relationships, but guys and gals in the studio who have had girlfriends tell me that crazy girls can happen at any age. Now the crazy and jealous girlfriend is exactly those two things. It starts off very well with you thinking, oh, what a major babe this girl is, but one day you'll catch a little glimpse in her eyes and you'll just see this like crazy burning through. It'll be like, I don't even mean the good kind of eccentric crazy, I mean the I may actually murder you sorry type of crazy. Now you may first notice it when you mention another girl's name and a flicker of literal hell dances across her eyeballs. You may notice it when you catch her reading your texts. You may notice when she starts becoming very possessive and posting lots of pictures of you together, being like, so in love right now, right for each other, meant to be IDST. She may even start deleting girls' numbers from your phone or screaming that she knows you are cheating. In a worst case scenario, she will even try and stop you hanging out with your other female friends. But guys, gals, don't listen to this kind of madness. Get out while you still can, and your bunny is alive and well. Relationships are no fun if the stress and fear for your life outweighs the joy and elation. In at number 7, we have the sensitive girlfriend. So bless her cotton socks, this type of lady is very delicate. She will often take comments the wrong way. So for example, if she asks how she looks to you and you respond with fine, you just made a huge mistake. What do you mean fine? You think I'm ugly? Oh! So you must never make direct comments about this girl's appearance unless they are 100% positive. If you're watching an emotional movie, this is the kind of gal that will need a whole box of Kleenex. She's also quite likely to be offended if you just put one kiss at the end of a text or email. She needs like a winky face, 3 heart emojis, 3 blowy kisses emojis, and at least 1 angel. Next up, we have the Insta girlfriend. Do you have an Instagram girlfriend? Does your honey Snapchat more times a day than she kisses you? If so, you may have ensnared some kind of social media Insta girlfriend. Now the Insta girlfriend is the kind who will make you wait to eat your food until after she has snapped it in the perfect angle and light. Hashtag gluten free. Dating the Instagram girlfriend is also to be her part-time photographer. She will make you snap her in good lighting from high above. No, higher. You need to get higher. Yeah, good, great. So choosing the perfect Instagram filter is as difficult a decision as choosing which college to go to or what to name your firstborn child. This is the kind of girl who will literally scream at you if you post an off-angle picture of her in the wrong light, because this is her brand, don't you know? Okay, so these types of girlfriend are a touch narcissistic. The only way to join them is to become an Insta boyfriend or co-Insta girlfriend. If not, she may not be for you. In at number 5, the age-old heartache, we have the long-distance girlfriend. Swoon, the long-distance girlfriend. Now this one is for the more stable of you out there, as this one can be a touch of work and you both really need to just trust one another. Now the long-distance girlfriend could be a girlfriend from back home that you're determined to stay with while at college, or she could be a long-term girlfriend but for work purposes you just have to live in different cities, or you could have met online and you're just really far away. So if you're dating the long distance girlfriend, you'll get used to late night Skype calls and FaceTimes. Sometimes you may even live in different time zones. Now to make this one work, you'll both need to be very patient and pretty into it. Next up, a girlfriend that I don't think I'd be into, we have the naggy girlfriend at number 4. Nag, nag, nag. Now the nag. Ooh, the nag. Now not to be confused with the motherly girlfriend, although they do share a couple of similar qualities. Now the nag will be a girlfriend who is constantly telling you off and asking you to do things. For example, it is totally fair to ask a boy to pick up his underwear from the floor, especially if it's been there for days. But the nag, however, will constantly bark somewhat unfair orders at their other half. They will also nag them to attend events they don't really want to and engage in various activities that they don't really want to. Often the nagging will be served with a little side of blackmail and point scoring. In at number 3, another girlfriend to be aware of, we have the gold digger / materialistic girlfriend. She can take the money, oh, when I'm in need. Yeah, Kanye knows. So the gold digger / materialistic girlfriend will want the most out of every single situation. She wants you to pay for dinner, always. She wants you to buy her shoes. Why? Well, because it's Wednesday. Now this kind of girlfriend will directly equate how much you love her to how much you buy her. She will delight in taking pictures of your gifts to her and posting them on social media so everyone knows just how generous a partner you are and how much you obviously love her. She'll be very jealous if others around her get more than she does. You can't buy her just one present for Christmas. Ho ho, she needs several. Also, every year you will need to outdo your efforts from the last, which I guess could be pretty stressful. Don't even ever think about making the materialistic girlfriend a handmade gift, because that kind of thing is just not gonna fly. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can respect this kind of gal. I think a honey should earn her own money. In at number 2, we have the promiscuous girlfriend. Promiscuous girl, you got what I need. Yeah. So this is the kind of girl that is in a relationship but is pretty happy being very flirty with other people. She may even have a job as some kind of busty promo hun or a Hooters beer girl. You can look, you can gape, but you cannot make a move because she has a boyfriend, don't you know? So I've heard from a couple of people in the studio that some girls who are in relationships and are very flirty may sometimes promise to leave their boyfriends for you, but they don't. So if she has a boyfriend, maybe just move on. Okay guys, so we have reached that all-important moment in our most amazing top 10 types of girlfriend. I have saved a really good one for you at number 1. She's the one that you want, ooh ooh ooh, honey, she's the one you need. Oh yes indeed. At number 1, we have the perfect girlfriend. Okay, so perfect doesn't actually really exist, but perfect for you absolutely does. Now this is the kind of girl that just gets you. She's the yin to your yang, she makes you happy, she's comfortable to be around, she's your kind of beautiful, she loves and respects you, she likes your friends and family, she's your co-pilot in the adventure that is your life. Aw, I want to be the perfect girlfriend, she sounds like an absolute babe.